Hey guys, today I'm doing an SQL tutorial. So what is SQL? SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's a programming language used to communicate with a relational database management system. So the two main things you should know about RDBMSs is that they're composed of relations or tables, and relational refers to basically relational operators that are used to link and manipulate these tables. And there's a bunch of different versions of RDBMSs, such as Microsoft SQL Server, which I'll be demonstrating a bit today, Oracle SQL, MySQL, Microsoft Access, and there's a bunch of others. And each one of these RDBMSs has a slightly different syntax of how you write your SQL code. So within a database, you have database objects, which are called tables. And within a table, you have a collection of related data entries that consists of rows and columns. So if you've ever seen an Excel spreadsheet like this, you would know or be familiar with how data is represented. So this is called tabular format. And in a tabular format, you have cells. So these are your data entries. And you have rows and you have columns. Each row is comprised of multiple columns. And basically these columns are just how your data is structured, or your data types. You should know about the four most basic operations that are the core of database management systems. So you have create, you have read, you have update, and you have delete. So I'll give you a few examples here. If we jump into our Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, which is basically just my interface to interact with the database management system, you can see here I have a sample database called AdventureWorks, and within the database I have my tables. So here's my table folder, and it's expanded right now so you can see all these different tables. And you'll notice that my table right here is called department, but it's also prefixed by something called human resources. And this is called a schema. So a schema is basically a broader way you can categorize or organize your tables. And that basically tells you that these tables in this human resources schema are more closely related together than these other tables. So you can also have relations between, this department table and a table outside the same schema. Like for example, this table, but your schema basically tells you that these are more closely related together. So if we take a look inside this department table, we can see that by default, our SQL Management Studio gave us our select statement. So this is already starting one of our CRUD operations called read. So this is the R in CRUD. It starts with a select, so it means select or retrieve the data, and this is optional. You don't actually need this. This just limits the data by how many rows you want. Then you would write each column separated by a comma. So we have all these columns, and then you have to specify which table that you want to select the data from. So on line 8 right here, you can see we have from, our database name, AdventureWorks, our schema, human resources, and our department, which is our actual table name. And these are all separated by periods. So this is just our basic select syntax. If you did not know by heart, or you had a lot of columns, you could also do an asterisk as a replacement for those column names. So if you run this, you'll get the same result. So I'll show you, for example, if you wanted to do a create operation, and it starts like this. So we write insert, because we're going to put or create data into this table. Into, and I want to insert where? I want to insert into this table. So I'm just going to copy paste it because it's going to be the same. You have to specify your columns, since I'm not going to put data into all these columns, I'll put it into these three. So you write open parentheses, column name. So it would be name, group name, and modified date. So these three columns I'm going to want to insert data into. And then finally, you write your values. So values, again, in open parentheses, and inside single quotes, you'd write your string. So I'm going to say, for example, name, software engineer, comma, again, two single quotes. My group name will be software, another comma, and then I'm going to use a built-in function that will return my local time on my machine, which is getDate. So if we run this, you can see it says run row affected, which means it ran successfully, my statement. And if I read again from my table, you can see we have this new row that wasn't there before. And you can check the date, which is the same date as right now. Another operation you could do is update, and it goes like this. Update. And what do we want to update? We want to update our table. And we want to set a value of one of these columns to something different. So for example, if I want to change this value right here, I would put the column name. So it's called name just by coincidence. And I want to put it equal to, let's name it software developer. Now, if I ran this, since I'm not specifying which one of these rows for this column I want to update, then it would put software developer for the entire table, which is not what I want. So it's always good practice to put your clause, which is called a where clause. So I'm going to write where, and you're going to use your primary key column. So a primary key in the table is just a unique identifier or a set of unique identifiers that differentiate each row in your table. So for example, you can see department ID is unique for each one of these rows. So since I want to modify this row, department ID has a value of 17. So I can say department ID equal to 17. So if I run this, again, run row affected, I read again from my table, then you can see now we have software developer instead of software engineer like we said originally. I want to do my last operation, which would be the delete operation. So you would say delete from, where do I want to delete from? I want to delete from this table. So I'm just going to copy paste it. And again, I'm going to write another where clause. And I'm just going to use the same one. So this where clause, again, you're going to write the column name, which happens to be my primary key column, department ID, equal to 17. So this is saying I want to delete this whole row where department ID is 17. So if I run this, you see one row affected. And if again I select from my table, it's gone. So these are the four basic operations you could do. So you have your create or insert operation here. You have your read operation or your select statement here. You have your update statement here and delete. Now, a few small points you should know about SQL in general is that it's case insensitive. So case insensitivity means that identifiers such as the table name and the columns and all these keywords, it doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. So I could go like this. I could write this select in lowercase, have this in uppercase, or I could even have, a few letters uppercase, few letters lowercase, and same for here. It doesn't change anything. So if I ran this, it gives me the same answer. That works for any one of these keywords. So update, same thing, all these special keywords and identifiers, it works the same. Place that it doesn't work is the values. So if I was to put, an uppercase R, uppercase G, or change the string and the values I'm inserting to the database, that does matter and it does care. So if I were to insert a new row and select from my table, you can see here that the R and the G that I just put uppercase, it recognizes that. Another thing I want to note about insert statements or creation operations is this part here. So this is where I note my column names, and it's optional if you intend to insert values to all your columns. So since I didn't want to update or insert a value for my department ID because it's set to auto increment by itself, then you have to explicitly name your column names. Again, it doesn't matter here, even if I put name how it appears, or if I write it like this, it will not matter because it's keyword or identifier. So that's basically it, guys. If you liked the video, give me a like, and if you want to see more programming content, drop a subscribe. Thank you for watching.